And we're live. Welcome to the show, everyone. It is another Takeover Tuesday with your host, Maximo, here at VOD Pod Media. And we're doing it big as always because this week we got our homie Tony from the H-Town, Houston, calling through. Tony, what's up, brother?
¿Cómo estás, mano? Thrilled to join you, and thank you for the invite.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, man. And it's long overdue, but you're a busy man. It seems like we always have conflicting schedules because, people like us are always doing things all over trying to creating opportunities for our people and stuff. So give a little introduction of yourself, man. You've got an impressive bio, Master of Fine Arts, I want to say.
Yes.
Master of Fine Arts from the University of Houston. Just wrote a new book. I want to hear all about that. But give us a quick intro to all of our viewers, all of our listeners, of yourself in your own words, and just give us a brief introduction, man. Pleasure.
I appreciate that. So, pleasure to meet folks and maybe run into friends again. But I'm a writer, activist known as El Librotraficante. And I grew up in Chicago. But I came the opposite route of mi gente. Mi gente were pickers here in Texas, and they wound up going north for the Industrial Revolution. Once that was bust, I wound up coming south for opportunities, and I wound up being, as you mentioned, the first Chicano to get a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at the University of Houston Creative Writing Program. And I fell in love with Houston. I fell in love with Texas, and I've been here. I'll add briefly that in 1998, I founded a group called Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say, because, mira, Maximo, it's been about representation forever, no? There was just not enough support for Latino writers. And I'll close with this and let you segue to your charla, is that I got recruited from Chicago, and when I got to the University of Houston, I'm like, why are you importing Mexicans from Chicago? This is occupied Mexico. And maybe ever since then, explaining that disconnect is what we do, because that's what we do. And we're filling that void and building that bridge between our communities and the rest of Texas and the nation.
Yeah, brother. Well, listen, man, I'm glad we could finally get you on, and we're going to move quickly. We had taco journalist Mondo Rayo in studio a couple of months ago now, and he mentioned, look, we need more shows like this. You've been an OG at this, man. You ain't no rookie when it comes to having your own radio, being on TV, being out there and representing for our people. You mentioned you come from a background of, crop pickers and migrant workers like many of my people do as well. I'm from Michigan, so we got the Midwest connection there, and now we're back in Texas because our people are originally from down here, occupied territory, as you mentioned. Let me ask you, because a lot of people of our ilk, meaning that our generation, have come up as activists. And it seems like wherever you go, even if people don't always agree with us, the people will start listening. And then people will start saying, yeah, man, I agree with that. And maybe some people don't always agree, but then people say, well, he's got a good point. Do you feel like that activist spirit is in our blood and in our DNA?
I think without a doubt, and probably what happens is that the definition of activism evolves, right? You were kind enough to mention my book. It's called The Tip of the Pyramid, Cultivating Community Cultural Capital. And some people may think it's just chronicling when right-wing Republicans in Arizona banned Mexican-American studies. Our crew from Nuestra Palabra, which I founded in 1998, 5 of us started the Librotraficante Caravan. And I bring it up because we entered a new era of activism at that point, which more folks noticed. But I would say, kind of like you're alluding to, in 1998, when we started Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Having Their Say, it didn't have the attraction for corporate media. It was exciting if you were there on the ground, but it wasn't as thrilling as the Librotraficantes, which were a different type of activism. But mira, our gente does that, no? We see opportunities, we unite, we read the ground, and we're like, at some point, we're serving leaders. We're like, oh my goodness, maybe I have to be the one to represent us at this time, and it seems like the community agrees. But it could be, a family member uniting the family. It could be that family member that acts. And you mentioned your gente went to Michigan, came back. One of my brothers left Texas, and he was an activist by acting and going north. So I think it's in our blood. Just English doesn't convey it that well. I'll leave it at that.
That's a good point. Nah, man, because you know, many of our people have struggled, man. We had listen, we do the show every Tuesday night. If you're watching, give us a like, comment, share, subscribe. Give us a comment about where you're calling in from. We're always willing and listening. We want to know where our people are listening in from. We got people all over the continental United States, occupied territory, native land, overseas, you name it. We had a brother that came through a couple of weeks ago, Hera Omar Marin. And we had a show on men's mental health. And he mentioned, you know, our people are under attack. You know, our people are we feel like we're always constantly under duress. You mentioned, you know, having literature banned, having our just basic books banned, bro. I mean, what's up with that? You know, the easiest way to destroy people is to, you know, ruin their understanding of who they really are, take away their opportunity to learn about their culture, take away their opportunity to just learn about who they are. You know, many of our people are under attack. I mean, our children are under attack in the education system you mentioned.
Well, I'm going to continue that thread and depress us, and then I'm going to shortly make sure we hit a high note, because it's ugly that just over 10 years ago, our history and culture was banned in Arizona. And we bring it up. I chronicle some of that in my book, because this is not a conspiracy theory. I think some people, when they hear you say that our hint are under attack, they think that that's an exaggeration. It's a conspiracy theory. I got the receipts. They're in my book. Legislators in Arizona abused their power to ban Mexican American studies. Now, here's the beautiful thing, though. We united. Of course, La gente de Tucson, Arizona, they took the brunt of it. They're the real heroes. But we all saw that and came together. The reason I didn't write a traditional corporate model handbook or chronicle of that is because, like you're alluding to, that's cyclical. And for example, sometimes it's passive, sometimes it's direct. That time it's direct. And as I say in my book, Mexican American studies will never be banned again, because we united and we overturned that when we all came together. However, that doesn't mean the attacks have ceased. Here's two quick examples. You know, one is that right now in Texas, there's all sorts of new types of censorship attacks that aren't doing what they did 10 years ago. They've changed it. And if you look at all the list of books that are being attacked, they don't openly say Mexican American, but you're going to see Spanish surnames. Here's a little thing that's even more sinister. And then I promise I'm going to fire us up. There's book deserts that ensconce all of our communities. Look at any Chicano, Chicanx community. Around it is a book desert. And in Texas, there is now only one Latino bookstore. And this is the upswing. And I don't mean to insult our brothers and sisters that have spots for books. What I mean is our community should be able to access its history and culture when they want during business hours every day of the week. There's only one place like that in Texas right now. And I'm proud to be the literary curator for the Latino bookstore at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, IG in San Antonio, Texas. But I want people to think about that. How do you mentioned erasing our history and culture if you take away the books. There's a direct way to do it that gets us fired up, but the soft way to do it is just to make it seem like common sense, blame us because there's not a market, and then make sure that there are book deserts all around our people. So, yeah. You know, that's why shows like that, like this, are vital, so we can get the information out, fire up those teachers, and unite.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned Mondo. Mondo mentioned to me, we need more shows like this, right? We need more voices. We need more platforms, you know, ones that we could get out and communicate and rally people up. And that's what we do every Tuesday night here. We try to bring in people like yourself, people that are, you know, inspiring, change makers, talking about the culture, uplifting our people. You mentioned the bookstore here on the west side of San Antonio, right over at the Guadalupe. Make sure you go out there and buy a book. Tell us why, Tony, a little bit about your book. What inspired you to write it in a couple of minutes, and why should we buy it?
No, I appreciate you asking about it. I don't want people to mistake it as a typical corporate model. I want it to be seen as a handbook for cultural accelerators like you are, For folks who want to know what that means, it's folks like you that progress, that do all the hard work, that advance, but stay connected to community, because we're tested at every level. At every level, there's someone or something trying to lure us away from community, and it's done softly, and it's a strong temptation. Could be a job that says you can't really hang out in the community, you have to do this or that. My book doesn't really chronicle just what happened during the ban of ethnic studies in Arizona, because many people can tell that story. I really wanted to describe how our community can come together in different ways. And one of those ways is using metaphors from before there were out colonial forces coming to our lands to subjugate our people. And over 500 years ago, our books were burned then, our art was
Mm.
burned then, and we were in the same situation. So one metaphor is the metaphor of the pyramid, especially the they're in around Mexico City. You got the Temple of the Sun. Those are metaphors from our community, and I'll just make it simply. I wanted to document our terms on our terms, remind us that we're powerful, and just talk about community organizing, which is what you're doing, which is what I do. But that's powerful and that's valuable, and it's not just humanitarianly correct. At this moment, it's the best for the country, best for democracy. It's actually a funny book. I sound pretty intense there, Maximo.
Well, I'm glad. I know you've been out here a few times. You had a grand opening, or a book unveiling where I think you read a couple of portions of the book, and there was a good turnout. I'm happy for you. So if you're watching this and you'd like to bring Tony to your community, I'm sure that he'd be willing to share a bit about his book. And again, we need this because there's power in community. There's power in uniting. I thought about this, man, because a good friend of ours who is a poet out there in San Antonio wrote a Facebook post about burnout today. And there's a lot of people in our communities that get burned out very quickly because of this work. And I started to think, am I going to get burned out someday? Because I've always got this passion, this vigor, Tony. I wake up like this. I tell everybody. Gylan tells me, the producer of the show, hey, man, you're on 10. I need you to take it down to 8. And I'm like, Gylan, I don't know if I can do that, man. And everybody that knows me, I'm always, rolling and chanting like this. And we out here because we have that spirit. We have that thrust for people in our community, Tony. It's for our moms, our tias, our abuelas, all of the people that have been in our blocks, man, that have been neglected and been pushed down and been told, no, you can't. We've been the ones to say, yes, you can. And so, I thought about, what am I going to do to fight burnout? And I'm thinking, man, I don't know. I think I have an obligation to continue to fight against the system, because they're working hard, Tony. As you know, they're working hard to create new laws, to continue to stonewall us, to continue to find new ways to tell us no and to turn us away. And so we just got to keep pushing and keep fighting, man. And that's what those voices are about.
Mm-hmm. And I think moments like this, mira, clearly we're human, right? So we get tired, exhausted, frustrated, annoyed, mad as hell, but also, it just seems sometimes, okay, am I actually getting something done? But you know what? This is what I really love about our community, us coming together. Even though I'm exhausted, when I hang out with you, I get fired up. When I'm
Yeah.
there at the Latino bookstore and I got other folks that are, thriving on it, when I get to see a young writer at Nuestra Palabra read for the first time, vato, that fires me up. And I'm not even playing. I feel a spark of adrenaline. No matter how tired I am, I feel that force. And just like you said, I'm like, you know what? I am obligated, that I am a beneficiary of that generational knowledge. And if I remember at this moment, I am obligated, and it's fun as hell to spread that. And I think that's what drives me. I don't want to make light of it though. For gente that want to share that they're tired and run out, we got to help each other too,
Yeah.
because we are a little stubborn and open up. So when one of our brothers and sisters open up, we should help them for sure. And also keep in mind when people are not vocalizing that, because that's a real thing. And like you say, some of us on our slow day down to 9, usually we're 10 or 12. But we got to keep in mind too that other folks are at different speeds, and we got to work off each other.
Yeah. And wellness is a part of the movement because if we can't take care of ourselves, we don't have anything to give. And we surely can't be giving people, the bad parts. We can't be giving them toxic fruit. We can't be giving them, poor advice, and it's got to be steel sharpen steel, and we got to be uplifting. We got to be, lifting as we climb. And so speaking of the movement, speaking of, leaders and activism, we've got to talk a bit about Cesar Chavez ahead of Cesar Chavez Day, which is this Friday. When you think about people that have helped define the Mexican American experience, and we know that there's some troublesome aspects around the words Mexican American. If you're watching this and you disagree, don't bite my head off, but go ahead and tell us if you agree or disagree. When you think about someone who gave so much to farm workers, we know many of our people to this day have been farm workers, crop pickers. My people pick pickles up in Michigan, and they pick different fruits and crops throughout all of, up and down the highway from South Texas all the way up to Michigan, the Midwest, Milwaukee, because that's how they were able to survive. And it was people like Chavez that had to do some other work, to get people fair and safe working conditions. We talk about leadership, you got to talk about somebody like Chavez who gave a lot to this country. What do you think?
No, and I think I appreciate you bringing up, his name, especially as we go near to commemorate, his Cesar Chavez Day. I'm looking forward to being the master of ceremonies for Houston's Cesar Chavez Day March coming up. It's actually a holiday in Houston Independent School District, but again, let's depress people and then fire them off. His name is not a household name to begin with. And, I always like to utter his name and then the name of Dolores Huerta, because then you're going to hear some people say, well, it's a shame that we didn't, if they have heard of him, or when they do, they say, well, he should have been revered when he was alive, treated differently. And the irony is, one of the co-founders of the United Farm Workers Union, Dolores Huerta, is still alive and with us, and she's even less of a household name than he is. And, it blows my mind, too, that, for example, there were his speeches. His books are hard to get, okay? Going back to what you said earlier. So his speeches were part of the Tucson Unified Mexican-American Studies curriculum that was taught to students as regular material. So here we are lamenting that we don't have a history. It used to be part of the Tucson Unified School District curriculum till it was banned. So even as we're talking about this figure, pointing out that he's not a household name, we can go back and see where he's been expunged deliberately from history. Additionally, people might say, well, that was a book. It's hard to get the collection of his speeches that was part of that curriculum, even more so now that it's not part of the curriculum. Here's what I also want to add. There's two films that chronicle the lives of Cesar Chavez and then one of Dolores Huerta. And we're not going to review the films. They're artifacts. They're there. However, those films were not blockbusters. They're hard to find. And, one of them had, Mike Peña, who plays superheroes in other films, was not a hit. The Dolores Huerta film, that was produced by Carlos Santana. Okay? I mean, I'm like, okay, if Carlos Santana can't distribute a film about our cultura that doesn't catch on, there's something about that system that's kicking us out. So here are these two figures as we mark their contributions, not household names, and we are independently fighting to keep their name aware. I want to add something else too. Here in Houston, Texas, as you may have heard, the Texas Education Agency has taken over Houston Independent School District, one of the largest school districts in the state, one of the largest in the country. And here's where things get complicated. There's HISD passed a rule. Now there's a day off for Cesar Chavez Day. Will something like that remain now that Abbott runs the school? And the Cesar Chavez Day March tomorrow is dedicated to us addressing that takeover. You started by setting up how some of these issues are complicated or controversial. It all
Yeah.
is. Why? Because we dare to preserve our history, because even when you block it from us, we demand to have access to it. And if you're going to keep it out of the classrooms, we're going to walk it and march it down the street in front of you. That's what's controversial. No nos dejamos. And I think that's really, when I think about the life of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and those before us, I try and think of the infinite present where a lot of those battles are not over. Let's go back to your show. Corporate media doesn't treat us like experts about ourselves. We have to create our own show. So I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm glad to be on here. And I'm glad
Yeah.
that we're spitting about Cesar Chavez and our antepasados.
Yeah, we got to lift up those leaders, man, because we wouldn't have opportunities if it wasn't for people like them, and it's all of them. You mentioned Dolores Huerta; she was just at the White House with Vice President Kamala Harris for a women's history event. And so we've got there's certainly no shortage of problems inside the United States, and so. Listen, folks, if you got something that you want to get done, you got to get out there and make it happen. I mean, you talk about gun violence. There's gun violence out there that's continuing to happen. There's, all sorts of issues in the community. And so we got to get out there and be heard, lots and lots happening. And so we've got a few short minutes left on the show. Tony, go ahead.
Let me just add this. For folks that think it's best to just keep working hard and not pay attention to some of these issues, let's make something clear. Our families need to know that accessing the American dream through education, like I was able to, my folks were pickers, and in one generation, through education, like you mentioned, I have a master's of fine arts. I've been able to go from take my family from the farm fields to different national stages. It's not going to be like that anymore. With education being attacked from censorship, book bans, defunding, proliferation of guns, making it dangerous to be at schools.
The
All these
cost of
ways to
school.
undermine, all these ways to undermine what's happening in school. Our families need to know our youth will no longer have access to the American dream through education like I did. It's becoming more and more difficult with all these policies. They need to get involved right now, and they can do it in their own communities. They got to find out. They got to be that leader. You talked about do we all have the ganas on our own? Do we all have that activism? Yes, it's time to use it right now.
Yeah. James Baldwin once said to be black and to be woke in this country is to be in a constant state of rage. And it's like that for people in our community as well. And if you have that rage, you can channel that and fuel that towards equity, towards justice, towards fairness. And it's up to you to find that outlet, starting at some of these marches. San Antonio also has one of the largest Cesar Chavez marches in the country. Had it last weekend. You've been out there before. Houston has a march coming up. Man, get out there. Start talking to people. Get out there. Let yourself be known. Use your social media, right? Use these phones as a way to get out there and communicate things, right? Get out there and write, somehow blogs, books if you can, find a way to get things done, because change ain't going to happen on its own. So I got to give you a salute, brother, for all the hard work you put in. We wanted to have you on the show quickly tonight. I'm going to give you a few short minutes to give us some closing thoughts, a quick goodbye, and just all peace and love to you and all the fam out there in Houston putting that work in.
Likewise, thank you so much for the continued work and all the support. I really would love people to get, active, and you can do it by cracking open a book, start a family library. If you're that cool relative, that tia that's giving someone books or is reading a book, you're modeling that for them. And I'd like to give a shout out to the Latino bookstore in San Antonio. If you have a chance, stop by. They're open business hours. They've actually just got funding from Congressman Joaquin Castro that they're going to be doing lesson plans. And we're starting with the writer Diana Lopez, free lesson plans for Bonham Academy, classroom set of books, teacher visit. I'll be there too. We want our youth to have the best access to literature in all the country so they can pursue the American dream, and we got to do it together. Thank you, hermano, for all the support. Look forward to hanging out with you. We'll be at a marcha together soon, and any way I can be of service, we're reporting for duty.
That's right, sir. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you so much to all our viewers, listeners. We'll see you next week. Peace and love. Gylan, take it home.